So I'd like to start off with a joke. It's always good to start off with a joke. This is a classic joke. If you've heard it before, tough luck. And but it's a great joke, and it's got a very good Musar Haskell, as we say. It's got a very good message, which is connected to tonight's topic. So the joke is that there's a Jew sitting on a park bench in Central Park, and he's really sitting there reading his newspaper. He's reading the Allgemeiner or the Jerusalem Post. And an Arab walks over to him, smacks him hard on the back of the head, and says, "That's from Syria." The Jew looks at him and he says, "Okay." A few minutes later, the guy comes back. The Jew's busy reading his newspaper. He smacks him again on the back of the head. He says, "That's from Ramallah." Jew's getting a little irritated, right? You can tell this was probably an American Jew, not an Israeli Jew, because an Israeli would not accept even one hit. American would be, okay, maybe the guy's having a hard day, everyone's got their problems, let's not be too judgmental. Guy comes back again, he gives him a smack on the back of the head, and he says to him, "This is from Iraq." Does this a few times. And then the Arab goes and he sits down on a bench next to the Jew. 10 minutes later, the Jew comes back carrying a big wrench. And he walks over to the Arab and he smacks him on the back of the head. And he looks at him in the eye and he says, "This is from Home Depot." L'chaim. So tonight we are going to be discussing what should our response be to anti-Semitism. Of course, it's all over the news now. President Trump ordered the assassination of... assassination is the wrong word. The rightful, the death sentence of, what's his first name, Soleimani? Qassam? I heard it was Moshe Soleimani, that's what I heard. But whatever his name is, and was, Yamach Shemai. And the question is, what's considered right, what's considered wrong, what should our response be? Should we be sad? Should we be happy? What should the response be? There's a lot of unfortunate acts of anti-Semitism, and I wouldn't even call it anti-Semitism, I would actually call it anti-Semitic terrorism going on the East Coast. And it's trickling over to the West Coast and all over America, but on the East Coast there's real attacks, where on Hanukkah a man came into a shul, into a Rebbe's house, and he stabbed people and physically tried to kill people. And it's in Crown Heights and in Brooklyn. There are attacks all the time. I believe there were 10 attacks last week where people are literally attacking Jews in the streets. And the question is, what should our response be? And what should we do? And tonight's talk is hopefully going to spread some light on this conversation, not just from a rah perspective, but from an intellectual perspective, from a mindful perspective, from a Torah perspective, which then can influence how angry we should be and what kind of actions we should take. Because there are two kinds of emotions. There are emotions that are just automatic, but are not based on intellect. So that's the way that you just feel because something happens and you get angry. And then often you do things that you regret. And then there are emotions that are based on intellect. There are emotions that are based on something that makes sense to you. And our response to anti-Semitism and our response to evil needs to come from a place of where we understand and we have a game plan of what we're doing. It can't just be that we're angry and therefore we want to respond. It needs to actually make sense what we're doing. It has to be based on morals. It has to be based on values. It has to be based on Torah values. And then we take the appropriate actions. So I'd like to begin with a interesting question or interesting talk that I was listening to by Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. And I'm not sure when this talk was from. I think it was, when did Netanyahu speak to the House, when the whole Iran deal was going down? 2015? 15? When was it? Right before that, yeah. Yeah, right before that. 2015? So, So the class was from sometime around that time. So it was a radio class or radio show that he was doing at the time, and a lady wrote in a question. The radio show was that he took questions, and people wrote in different questions that they had, and one of the questions that he got was as follows. The class was, I guess, around the time of Purim, which we're coming up to now. The next big Jewish holiday is Purim. And a lady wrote him a question that said as follows. She said she's very uncomfortable with the story of Purim and how to teach that story to her children. Because at the end of the story of Purim, the Megillah details for us exactly how many people the Jewish people killed, how many of their enemies they killed. If you read the Megillah, I'll give you the story. Haman wanted to kill the Jewish people. He sends out a decree. He gets a decree from the king to kill the Jews on the 13th day of Adar. The whole story of Mordechai and Esther, the Jews get a decree, the whole story of Purim, the Jews get a decree to defend themselves. And then the Megillah tells us exactly how many of our enemies we killed. I can't remember right now, but I think it was 50,000 in Shushan. And it tells us exactly how many people we killed. So she said that she's very uncomfortable with this idea. Why is the Megillah so focused on telling us the details of how many people the Jews killed? Why can't I just say, and the Jewish people stood up and we were saved and everybody was happy and they all went for Slurpees and then they went for therapy and everybody danced the Kumbaya afterwards and everybody was all good. Why does the Megillah have to mention how many people the Jewish people killed? The details gives us the numbers. So he gave a fascinating answer I'd like to share to start the discussion tonight. And he said as follows. He says, if you want to understand why the Megillah does that, you have to really be true and honest to the story. What does it mean that the Jews killed their enemies? Why did the Jews kill their enemies? And who did they kill? And why were they fighting? So the Megillah tells us that Haman became a big advisor to the king, and he was able to get the king's signet ring or to get the ability to make any decrees that he wanted. And he made a decree that on the 13th day of Adar, that anybody that wanted was allowed to go out and kill Jews according to the law of the land. Which means that on that day, usually I guess murder was illegal, and you were not allowed to just kill people. But they made a decree that you're allowed to go out and kill Jews on the 13th day of Adar. It was like you get a fishing license. Jews don't usually. We usually just go fishing. But if you're not Jewish and you want to go fishing, you usually get a license. When I go to Mammoth in the summer, if you want to go fishing, you get a license for the day. So that day was like open, God forbid, open day hunting on Jews. That the police and the government and the army, everybody was allowed to go and help all the anti-Semites to go and kill Jews. That's what Haman got decreed. That's the story of Purim. At the end, after Esther and Mordechai are able to get Achashverosh to change his mind and to realize this is a bad idea, they tell Achashverosh, they say, we got to get this decree taken away. This is not a good decree. They're going to come out and kill my people, Esther says. We got to stop this. And Achashverosh says, anybody know what Achashverosh says?
You can't undo a decree, you can only make a new decree.
Thank you there you go. They didn't have Congress and the Senate to override things. They were, whatever it is. So they couldn't impeach Achashverosh because if they tried, they might have lost their head and a few other body limbs. So Achashverosh says, very good, the Megillah tells us, Mark, thank you, that a decree that is given out by the king cannot be taken back. It can't be rescinded. Once the decree goes out, that's the decree. So they said, well, what are we going to do? We need a new decree. So they said, okay, well, the new decree is we're now going to give a visa or a license to all Jews that according to the law of the land, they're allowed to defend themselves. Because according to the first decree, if they came to kill Jews and Jews killed their attackers, then they violated the law of killing somebody because they were allowed to kill Jews. So now they got a decree that the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. Then we have the whole story happens and Haman and his children all get killed. Then the 13th day of Adar rolls around. Now everybody's already seen that Haman has already fallen. Haman got killed. And the king put out a decree saying the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. And in theory, I would take back that original decree if I could. but I can't because that's the law of the land. So the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. So you had to be a really big anti-Semite and a real big hater to want to come out and try and kill the Jews on that day. The law was the Jews were allowed to arm themselves. They all went out and got AR-15s. And they got themselves big hatchets and extra long hunting knives, semi-automatic, not fully automatic, right, the AR-15s. And depending on which state they could live in, that's how many bullets their magazine was allowed to carry. But on Amazon, you can buy different magazines. So the Jews went out and they got ready. Now, the Jews did not go out on that day and attack their enemies. The Jews just defended themselves on that day. That's what the Megillah says. The Jewish people stood up to defend themselves. Those that hated the Jewish people came out to kill the Jewish people. And then the Megillah tells us exactly how many of them, of those people that came to kill the Jews killed. So you have to understand that the Jewish people in the times of Purim did not go out to kill other people. The Jewish people went out simply to defend themselves. And then if somebody comes to kill you, the law is, according to the Torah, you have to get up and kill that person. You don't get up and talk to them. You don't get up and offer them some gummy bears. You don't get up and offer them something to make them happy. You don't get up and offer to take them on a walk or pay for their therapy. You get up and you kill that person. That's what the Torah tells us. Haba lahargecha, somebody comes to kill you. Hashkem, you get up. V'hargei, and you get up and you kill them. Now, how could that be? The Torah is the Torah of kindness and truth, and Jews are nice people and good people, and Judaism brought kindness and charity to the world, and the sanctity of life to the world, and the Jewish people are always known as the people of goodness and kindness and of the book. What are you talking about? So in order to understand this, you have to understand that there are two kinds of killing or two kinds of violence in this world. There's moral violence and there's immoral violence. They both look the same, but they're completely different because the intent behind them is completely different. Immoral violence is when bad people go out to kill innocent people. Soleimani, Iran, the Palestinian, I don't know if you can find anybody that's moral, or maybe somebody that's not in power amongst the Palestinian Authority, but Arafat, and all of these people are all evil people. They're not people that are a little upset. They're not people that are just got an issue and they feel like they've been wronged. They're evil, bad people. And they want to do immoral violence, which means they want to go and hurt people that they have no right to hurt, purely because they are bad, evil people. Now, what is needed at that time is for good, moral people to stand up and to use moral violence. It's not pretty. It's not nice. It's a very difficult thing for people to do, but it has to be done. Now, they look the same on the outside, but they are actually completely different actions in reality. They're the same action, but in truth, they're completely different actions. So for example, this lady that asked the question is somebody that's trying to equate this whole idea that life is all good, and people are good, and people don't mean bad, and we have to understand people. Are you supposed to not use violence and stop the person from killing a child, or killing a woman, or killing anybody? Or are you supposed to get up and go and stop that person? The same thing could be said. If you see, God forbid, somebody raping somebody, or somebody acting violently or trying to kill somebody, and you have the ability to kill that person, to shoot that person, or to stop that person, what are you supposed to do at that time? What you're supposed to do is, you're supposed to kill the perpetrator. You're supposed to use violence against the person that is bringing violence, that is using evil violence. The reason the Megillah tells us in all details of how many people the Jewish people killed is because that's part of the message of Purim. Part of the message of Purim is that Jews do not let other people kill us. We stand up and we defend ourselves in any which way that we can, politically and physically, and we study whatever it takes. We need to defend ourselves. Part of the story is you need to know how many evil, murderous people we killed. Because part of the message is you stand up and you defend yourself. I don't know where, I guess we've been living in times where things have been too good for the Jewish people for too long, that we think that it's all about Jews are supposed to be just nice and kind and happy-go-lucky people. We've been lucky. Eventually you get put to sleep. If you're not in dangerous environments, then you don't have the ability to defend yourself. I always think, when I think of people or creatures that don't have to defend themselves, a great place to look is Australia, because my brain's not working right now. But what's got the kangaroo, right? I don't think there's anything that hunts the kangaroo. Maybe the saltwater crocodile. What? Does the dingo hunt them? All 7 dingoes hunt the 50,000 kangaroos. I think kangaroos die of old age. I don't know which other animals. In Africa, I can tell you, almost no animals die. Even most people don't die of old age in Africa. In Africa, you're always being hunted by somebody, and there's always some kind of creature that's bigger and stronger than you that's about to kill you. But in Australia, there's not a lot of predators, right? The only real predators were the original Australians that came there and hunted down the Aborigines. But we're not going to talk about that because we don't want to speak badly about our Australian brothers. And fire is dangerous. But it doesn't have a natural predator, a real natural predator, to my knowledge. I could be 100% wrong. You can ask Steve Irwin, Oliver Sholem, or his son. You know who Steve Irwin is? It's amazing. It's amazing. So look at the snake. Just a beauty, isn't she? A beauty. It's holding a snake that could literally, one drop of its venom will just you'll die, A Jew would die looking at the snake, and he's busy holding it. It's got venom dripping off its fangs. Just amazing. So we were saying something very important, and then we got into Steve Irwin. So no predators. So we've been living here so long that we haven't had predators. So we've become these kind, nice, koala bear Jews. Let's just hang out. Let's be friendly. Let's be nice. People are not really bad. No one's really evil. If you really speak to them, if you understand where they're coming from, everyone's got an opinion. Your opinion's not right. They've also got an opinion. If you grew up in Ramallah, maybe you'd also want to kill Jews. I don't care. If somebody's coming to kill innocent people, you stand up and you kill them. If they've been educated wrong and they've been intoxicated with bad thoughts, that's their problem. There's nothing we can do about it. Can't change them. If you can, then you try. But what you need to do primarily is you need to stand up with force. And this is based on Jewish values. These are Jewish values. Jews were warriors for most of Jewish history. If you study the Jewish people, the founding of the Jewish people, when we came into the land of, we left Egypt, we had to fight Amalek right away. Moses led the Jews in fighting Amalek. The Jews had to fight many nations. The Jews had to conquer the land of Israel. The Jews had to defend themselves. The Jews were warriors. The Jews are warriors with an A and an O. Today we're more warriors than we are warriors. But Jewish people are warriors, and we need to stand up and we need to defend ourselves. A key element of the story of Purim is that we need to stand up and we need to defend ourselves. There's a fascinating story in the Torah that we read a few weeks ago. It's the story of where Jacob gets the blessings. Everyone remember the story a little bit? Jacob and Esau are the children of Isaac, and Isaac is going to... No, am I mixing up the whole story? Yeah, I am. Yes, I'm right. Yaakov, it's too cold. I'm having a brain freeze over here. Yaakov and Esau are the children of Yitzchak. Yitzchak goes blind at the end of his life, and Yitzchak has to bless his son. And the blessing is going to go in Yitzchak's mind to the older son, to Esau. What is this blessing? This is the blessing that Yitzchak received from his father, from Abraham, and Abraham was blessed by God. This is the blessing of carrying on the spiritual power of the Jewish people, creating the Jewish people, the people that are going to be able to turn darkness into light, the people that are going to be able to turn the world into God's garden. That's what it is. You watch all these scientific sci-fi movies, and maybe you watch The Matrix. Or maybe you watched any, I don't know, what's the other one with the other sci-fi movie where the guy has the special energy, he's given the...
Seinfeld.
No. Star Wars, thank you very much. Star Wars, where he's given the power and the special energy, and the Darth Vader is coming to take away that energy. I haven't watched any of the Star Wars, so if I'm completely wrong in the storyline, you'll forgive me. But one person is given the energy to be able to conquer evil. Okay? All of this comes from the Bible. The Jewish people have the power to take goodness and to be able to conquer darkness. Where does this come from? It comes from Abraham, who was blessed by God. Abraham passed on that divine energy to his son Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was about to pass on that energy to his sons. It was either going to be Esav or it was going to be Yaakov. Yitzchak wanted to bless his older son Esav because the blessing was supposed to go to the older son. We're not going to say the whole story, otherwise we're going to be here till tomorrow morning, and it's very cold, especially here in California. We know that we're very appreciative of all of you sitting out here and dealing with this terrible cold weather out here. But Yitzchak wants to bless Esav. Without getting into the whole Kabbalah of it, Yitzchak saw that Esav was a powerful individual. He was very much into hunting and killing, but he also had a very powerful energy, the energy of Toihu, according to the teachings of Kabbalah. And Yitzchak thought that by blessing him, he would be able to take this energy that was now being used in the wrong way and use it in the way of holiness. He thought he could change Esav by giving him the blessing. Rivka, who was more practical than her husband, surprise, surprise, if you're not aware of this, if your wife tells you something, usually about leaving on time or getting somewhere on time or being practical, usually a good idea is to listen to her, or you could not listen to her, and then after you make the mistake and you're cleaning up the mistake, then you'll say, I should have listened to you in the first place. But Rivka says it's not a good idea to bless Esav, you got to bless Yaakov. But she couldn't tell Yitzchak. It's a very long story with a lot of Kabbalah behind it. But we are taught that Yaakov was more of the kind, holy person that was called a Yoshev Ohel. He sat in the tents of Torah. That's what he did. He was not a person of the fields. He was not a hunter. He was not a very physically powerful or physical person. That was Esav. And Rivka says, if we're going to bless Esav, we're going to have problems over here, because he's going to take the power for good and it's going to become dissolved or overtaken by the powers of evil. So Rivka says to Yaakov, we need to dress you up as though you are Esav and send you into your father to get blessings. And they go and they shech the goats, and they take the goat's skin and they put it on Yaakov's arms, because Esav was a very hairy guy. He didn't go for any laser treatments. If he would have been around today, he could have. But he was a very hairy guy. Yaakov was a ish chalak. He was a very smooth. He didn't have was a completely different complexion. Their whole bodies were different. Everything was different about them. But she dresses him up like Esav, because if he's going to go into Yitzchak was blind, but in case he would touch him, in case he would come too close to him, he had to have the aura of or the feel of Esav. So Yaakov goes into Esav to get the blessing. And if you read the story, it's a very interesting story. He says, how did you get here so quickly? And Yaakov says, God helped me. And Yitzchak becomes very suspicious. And he says, come closer so I can touch you. He wanted to feel if it was Yaakov or Esav. And he feels him, and he feels the arms, and he feels the skin, he feels the hair. And he says, Hakoil Yaakov, V'hayadayim Yedei Esav. He says the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. The reason why he says the voice, because he said when Yaakov came in, he said, how did you get here so quick? He said, God helped me. Esav didn't talk like that. The voice doesn't only mean the actual voice, the sounding of the voice. It's the way he spoke. It's the values that he had. It's the way that he carried himself. It's the way he spoke. It was who he was. So Yitzchak says, Hakol kol Yaakov. It's the voice is the voice of Yaakov. V'hayadayim, but the hands are the hands of Esav. Now at this time, when Yaakov is blessing when Yitzchak is blessing Yaakov, this is like the paradigm of the future of the Jewish people. This is representing like what kind of energies we're going to have and how we're supposed to behave for the future. It wasn't just a father blessing a son. This is the paradigm of how we're supposed to be going forward. You understand the idea? It's not just the physical people, it's also the spiritual energy. It's what they represent at the time. What was going on over here? The reason why Yaakov had to be blessed, dressed like Esav, was because in order for the Jewish people to survive and to be able to bring our message to the world, we are going to have an element of Esav in order to survive in this world. Hakol kol Yaakov, it has to be the voice is the voice of Yaakov. V'hayadayim, but the hands are the hands of Esau. As I mentioned earlier, there's moral violence and there's immoral violence. Immoral violence is Esau violence, is violence of Soleimani, of Hitler, of Stalin, of evil people. There's nothing good about it. It's not the voice of Jacob. This is the voice of Esau and the hands of Esau. These are evil people. They want to control. They want to destroy. They just want to do bad. But then there's another kind of violence. And what's it founded on? The voice of Jacob, but the hands of Esau. Where's your come from? Where's your intention? Why are you being violent? Yaakov, if he would have just been Yaakov, he would not have had the power, and the Jewish people would not have the power to survive in the world surrounded by Esau's. If Yaakov would have gone in and got the blessing just as Yaakov himself, we would have been good, nice, Nobel Prize winning people, and anybody they wanted could have come and killed us. Because we would have just been the good, kind Jacob that sits and studies all day. But Rivka knew that this was not going to survive, so she dresses Jacob up like Esau on the outside, but on the inside he's Jacob. The Jewish people have to be true to the Torah, true to our values, true to Hashem, but at the same time, sometimes we have to behave like Esav, because there is such a thing as holy violence. There is such a thing as doing things that are holy when you're protecting yourself. How do you know if it's holy violence? If it's protecting people. If it's not going to perpetuate. How do you know if it's evil violence? If it won't stop. That's the famous statement from Golda Meir, which he said that if the Jewish people that if the Arabs were to put down their arms, were to put down their weapons, there would be peace tomorrow in the Middle East. And if the Jews were to put down their weapons, there would be no Israel tomorrow. So how do you know which is good violence and which is bad violence? Bad violence has no end in sight. Good violence is only used to protect good people. It doesn't want to continue. It doesn't want to have more violence. It doesn't want to hurt people. It doesn't want to kill people. It only uses it if it has to use it. But when it has to use it, you have to use it to the full extent that is necessary in order to protect lives. That's what has to happen. You have to stand up and you have to protect people. It says you shall not stand by the blood of your fellow. I was studying, my son has a test in Chumash tomorrow, and actually this is the verse that he was studying tonight. It says that you cannot stand by the blood of your fellow, and it says, I am Hashem your God. The commentaries, Rashi says, why does it say, I am Hashem your God? Because if you see somebody drowning, or if you see somebody being attacked, and you can help them, and you don't help them, then the blood of that person is on your hands. And it says, I am the Lord your God, because nobody else in the world knows that you didn't help the person. So you think you got away with it. So it says over there, I am the Lord your God, to tell us that Hashem knows. What it's telling you is, Hashem tells you if somebody is being attacked, and Rashi brings down if they are listim, if there are evil people that are attacking a person that you can save, and you don't go save them, the blood's on you. You have to go and save that person. It's the same idea. If somebody's drowning and you can go and help them, would you go and help them? Would you jump into the ocean and save them? If you could without killing yourself? Of course you would. Why wouldn't you want to save somebody? Well, it's the same thing. If you have to use violence to protect somebody that's being killed by someone that's violent, you got to use violence. It's the same thing as jumping into the ocean. There's no difference. But we have this whole idea in our minds that violence is bad. And guns are bad. that any kind of killing at somebody is bad. That's not true. Where would the world be today if nobody stood up to Hitler? In fact, that's what almost happened. Chamberlain went, and peace in our times, and he came back and he said, guys, I got great news. Let's all sit down for some scones and tea, because I've spoken to Hitler. We had a therapy session. He cried on my shoulder, told me he had a tough childhood, and now he's decided to turn over a new leaf. And he said that he's not going to attack anybody or conquer anything else. We now have peace in our times. He was a prophet. And what do we see very soon afterwards? When Hitler was ready, then he went and attacked. What you need to do is, if good people didn't stand up, then there would be no free world today. If good people do not stand up to evil, then evil wins. All that it takes for evil to succeed is for good people not to do anything. Right? Who said that? I forgot which. Who? That wasn't Churchill. It was. I forgot who said that.
She sang it.
So, this is a very powerful idea, because we literally have been put to sleep, and the American public have been put to sleep. When the President of America, now, I'm not telling you what to vote, and I'm not telling you if you should like Donald Trump as a person, or as a politician, or anything else. That's not my job.
Is this on the record, or should we turn the camera on?
No, you could say whatever. I'm not telling you what to say and what to do. But when the President of America stands up and kills an evil person, I don't understand how that can't be fantastic. I don't understand how we're not thankful, how you can't be happy and thankful for what he's doing. Whether you like the man or you don't like the man, I don't care. We're talking over here about a certain moral and a certain value. The fact is that he is standing up against evil. And when you stand up against evil, evil goes away, or evil gets scared, and evil does not perpetuate. That's what happens. When you allow evil to continue, then it just grows. The way that I understand, or I had like I don't know if it's an epiphany or a moment of where I understood how the world runs. I think if you want to understand world politics, and this applies at every level, in your office or at work, with your neighbors, in your family. If you want to understand people, the best place to understand how people and society runs at every single level is if you go to a 2-year-old classroom. If you go into a classroom where there's a 2-year-olds, you can understand how the entire world runs. Within that group, there is going to be one bully, or two. One kid that's going to go around and try and push the boundaries. Within that group, there is going to be one little kid that just gets pushed around always. It doesn't stand up for himself, or 2 or 3 of those kids. Then there's going to be a lot of kids that fall somewhere in the middle, and there's going to be some that are a little bit more, some a little bit less, but you're always going to have those two extremes. And you're going to find that the bully is generally going to go after the weakest kid in the classroom. When hunters go hunting, they look for the weakest of the herd. If you've ever watched any Animal Planet or National Geographic, what's his name, the commentator? Hey? Attenborough, right? Attenborough, Richard Attenborough. Is it Richard? It's Richard Attenborough, right? And there she walks. Beautiful. As the sun sets over the African savannah, the lion returns to the herd, tired from a long day. That's it. So they always are looking for the weakest link. That's how it goes. When a lion attacks, they're looking for the youngest or the oldest in a herd. That's what they're looking for. They chase them, see who falls behind. Those that are attacking are looking for the weakest link. The bully is looking for the weakest kid in the classroom. That's why you got to teach your kids to stand up for themselves, but make sure that they don't become the bullies. But you have to stand up for yourself. If you don't put the bully in his place, the bully's never going to stop. Because the reason why one kid is being a bully is because there's something hurting that kid inside. There's something wrong inside. That kid needs more love. There's something with that kid, the bully, that needs to be dealt with. It's not going to stop by itself. It's not going to happen. The same way it won't stop in a 2-year-old classroom, The same way it won't stop if there's a bully in the family. It won't stop if there's a bully at the office. It's not going to stop if there's bullies at the UN. That's the way that it works. So until you're going to stand up to evil, evil will continue. But once you stand up to a bully, and once the bully realizes that they can't go around beating up people or hurting people or doing evil, then they stop. Because they're really cowards. They're going to do it for as long as they can, and then they'll stop. And if they won't stop, then in this context, then you have to kill them. There's no talking to them. There's no discussions with terrorists. Terrorists don't want to talk. Terrorists understand one thing, and that's terror and violence. Either they're doing it, or it's being done to them. That's the way that it works. And in today's world, with Muslim terror, with Islamic terror, whatever you want to call it, it's even worse than in the past, because they actually want to die. They don't even want to live. They can't wait till they die. So either we're going to kill them, or they're going to go out and kill people. So what do we have to do? We have to stand up and we have to do what's right. So now the question is, so what do we do about anti-Semitism? Right, anti-Semitism, that's more, what we just spoke about is more on a global level. Let's bring it down to a practical level. So what should our solution be to anti-Semitism? People are coming out and attacking Jews for being Jewish. People are attacking places of worship. What should Jews do? Should we go low-key? Should we go underground? Should we, I don't know, not be so Jewish in public, not be so Jewish in private? What should we tell our kids? How should we tell our kids to live their lives? It's a big question. And how do we stop anti-Semitism? All right, that's the question. How do you stop anti-Semitism? So I got some good news and I got some bad news. It goes like this. Everybody knows the adage or the saying of what anti-Semitism represents in the world, that the Jewish people are the miner's canary. That when the miners go down, or used to go down into a deep mine, and if they were not sure if there were dangerous fumes and gases down there, they would send down the canary bird. And if the bird came up alive, then it was safe for humans. And if the bird died, then it was dangerous, because the birds have very sensitive lungs, or very small lungs. And if any kind of poison or danger in the air, they would die right away. So the Jewish people are the miner's canary, which means that whoever is attacking the Jews is not going to stop with the Jews. And unfortunately, but at the same time, for the Jewish people, fortunately, Islamic terror has spread from not only being against Jews, but now it's actually against the free world. When it was happening only in Israel, it was a Jewish problem. And everybody said it's all about land, it's all about this, it's all about that, to the Jews, they dislike the Jews. But after Islamic terror has now hit Europe and come to America, you have to really want to be a ostrich and stick your head in the ground to say that it's a Jewish problem. But where did it start? It started with the Jews. So evil people, when they go after the Jews, it's not because they dislike the Jews only. It's because they hate everybody. They want to be the ultimate dictator and they want to be the ultimate controller. So the Jewish people are the canary. Whoever is attacking the Jews will, for sure, if they have the ability, continue to attack the rest of humanity, or the rest of the free world. That's how it goes. Hitler started with the Jews, didn't finish with the Jews. Islamic terror is started with the Jews, but it's not finishing with the Jews. If you go and you look at all evils, they all start with the Jews, but they don't finish with the Jews. So what can we do as Jewish people about anti-Semitism? And the answer is, unfortunately, the bad news is, nothing. Because it's not a Jewish problem. We didn't create anti-Semitism. It's not like Jews were people that were living in a way that we deserve to be hated. And therefore we should change our behavior. So for example, if Jews were, I don't know, bad people, and I don't know, we were hurting children and hurting animals and behaving in a really, really evil way, and people hated us because of it, then we should change our behavior. But the Jews are not doing that. We're not hated because we're doing anything wrong. It's the exact opposite. We're hated because we're doing everything right. The reason why the evil people of the world hate us is because they hate holiness. They hate goodness. Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, may his name be erased, he said it clearly. He said that the Jewish people represent the conscience of the world. I don't like it that they have a God. They want to bring God to the world, that everybody should realize there's a higher power. I want to be the ultimate power. Human beings are the ultimate power. We're allowed to do whatever we want. We can kill who we want, behave how we want, and act however we want. He hated us not because we were doing anything right. He hated us because we were doing because we were doing everything wrong. He hated us specifically because we were doing everything right, and he wants to do everything wrong. So can the Jewish people change their behavior in order to stop anti-Semitism? The answer is unequivocally, absolutely no. And if you thought that maybe if we behaved less Jewish, we could stop anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, unfortunately, was the greatest answer to that question. A very clear answer that the Germans went out and they killed anybody that even had one grandparent. Even if your father's father was Jewish, which means you're not Jewish at all, they went out to kill the Jewish people. So it doesn't help not to be Jewish, because they're coming out to get you. So that's the bad news. The bad news is that there's nothing we can do to change anti-Semites, so to speak, from hating us, because we didn't do anything to deserve their hatred in the first place. The good news is, and this is going to be like a Jewish statement, is that we can do something to change them. And what is that? We can stand up and be proud of Jews, and we can stand up and we can defend ourselves. And when you stand up and you're prouder and you defend yourself, then the anti-Semites won't stop hating you, but they will stop killing you, because you're going to kill them first. Because it's not going to be worth it for them to come after this canary. They're going to go hunting for something else or somebody else or something else. But if you don't allow yourself to be seen as a prey, then they're not going to come hunt you. So what do we need to do when there's anti-Semitism as Jewish people? We need to stand up and be even more Jewish. We need to be more proud that we're Jewish. If there's attacks on shuls, then you get better security and you get armed and you learn how to defend yourself and you go to shul. You don't stop going to shul and go underground and take off all your Jewish signs and say that we're not Jewish and act like we've disappeared and gone underground, because then you've given in to anti-Semitism. You stay Jewish, but you defend yourself. You don't become less Jewish and teach your kids not to be so Jewish because they're going to be hated by the world. You teach your kids to be more Jewish and more proud of their Judaism. Because the fact is that non-Jews respect Jews that respect themselves. It sounds like it's a cliche and it's old, but it's the truth. If you respect yourself, people respect you. If you don't respect yourself, they're not going to respect you, and they're going to want to come out and they're going to kill you because you're showing weakness. You're showing that you are prey. One of the big things about most predators is that if a predator is coming after you, you have to stand up and stand your ground and try and scare away the predator. And the reason is because the minute that you run away from a predator, you are behaving like prey. And automatically their natural wiring is to kill prey. So if you behave with mannerisms of a prey, then the animal is going to kill you. You don't generally find, lions don't hunt leopard. And lions don't hunt hyenas, even though they're fighting over the same carcasses. Because a predator does not hunt a predator. They look for certain mannerisms. And they look for certain behaviors. Animals are hardwired. So if you don't behave like an animal of prey, then you're not prey. So this Israeli general went out, he got dropped up on the ice. He's sitting there and he's doing his fishing. It's very unlikely to see a polar bear. And they're in the middle of nowhere. They don't have any way of contacting anybody. Lo and behold, polar bear shows up. And he's sitting there and he's thinking and he's saying, I've been in the army my whole life. I fought many, many wars, survived until now, and this is how I'm going to die? Israeli general killed by polar bear while fishing for salmon or for whatever. He's like, this is how I'm going to go out? I've been through the most terrible places on planet Earth, and I'm going to go out being killed by a polar bear? And he remembered what the guy said. So he stood up and he said, my name is, I forgot what his name. And he said, Mr. Polar Bear, I got here first. This is my hole. I dug. I got this hole. I'm fishing here. You have to leave. And he says the polar bear looked at him and said to him, Ma shlomcha? You know the joke about the guy in the zoo? You know the whole... how does the joke go about the guy in the... Yeah, the animal outfit. You know the animal outfit? The guy gets dressed up. Oh, the guy gets dressed up. A guy, Chaim Shmerel, goes to Central Park Zoo, and they say, we're willing to pay, $100 for anybody that wants to come work for the day. Yeah, what can I do? $100. He goes. And they say, what's my job? He says, well, our monkey died recently, and people are very excited to see the monkey. So we need you to dress up like a monkey every day and jump around in the trees and eat bananas. And you'll get paid $100 a day. He says, well, sounds good to me. Why not? So he goes out to the thing. He's a little embarrassed the first day. He goes there sitting. He's dancing around a little bit. The next day, more people come. He starts dancing more. People start, responding to him, throwing him peanuts. The next day, he gets very, very excited. And he climbs up high in the tree, and he's dancing, and he's making all these moves, and everybody's laughing and singing. He's the greatest animal in the zoo. And he's jumping up and down on the top branch, and by mistake, he loses his footing, and he falls down into the enclosure next door. And he looks up, and to his horror, he's fallen into the lion enclosure. And he thinks, oy vey, now what? And the lion walks over to him slowly. And as the lion gets real close to him, he says, okay, this is how I'm going to go. He says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And the lion says, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. So he turns to the polar bear, and he says, this is my hole, and you got to go. And the polar bear looks at him, and he says he has a moment of where the polar bear is eyeing him out. Polar bear is it's the largest bear. A polar bear makes a human being look like Richard Attenborough could tell you all the details, or Steve Owen. But a human being a polar bear is massive. It's a huge creature. Looks at him. He stands there. Said he was in immense fear. Eventually, the polar bear looks at him, turns around, and walks away. That's what happened. Polar bear walked away. What happened? He did not behave like a prey. He did not give in to the predator. He showed that he's a predator. When the predator sees another predator, goes away. So too, that's how it is for the Jewish people. To blame the Jewish people for anti-Semitism is like blaming the canary bird for dying in the mine. You put the bird down into the mine, it comes back dead, and you start screaming at the canary, why didn't you figure out a way how not to die? Why didn't you breathe another way? Why don't you behave like another animal? Why are you dying from fumes? Why is it the bird's fault that he died? It's the fumes that killed the bird. The bird didn't do anything wrong. For the Jews to blame themselves for anti-Semitism is the most ridiculous thing on planet Earth. Change, we shouldn't be so Jewish, we shouldn't act so Jewish, we should say we're sorry, we should give in, all these things that are non-Jewish values, and behave in other ways. You're blaming yourself for the problem that you never created. I've shared the story many times about Rabbi from Pittsburgh. He wrote many books. Rabbi on psychology and addiction. Rabbi Twersky, thank you. Rabbi Twersky, where Rabbi Twersky dresses in a up hat, and a long black coat, he's got a long white beard, and he once got onto an airplane, and he was putting his luggage away, and as he sits down, an old Jewish lady sits down next to him and starts to talk to him in Yiddish, and she says, Ashande, an embarrassment. She starts shouting at him in Yiddish. You're the source of anti-Semitism because you dress different and you talk different and you act different. That's why they all hate us. They hate us because we look different. We have to be like them. This is America. You're not in the old country anymore. You have to change. You can't behave like this. She's shouting at him in Yiddish. So Rabbi Twersky turns to her and he says, excuse me, madam, I don't quite understand what you're saying. I'm Amish. So the lady says to him, oh my gosh. She starts talking Yiddish, in English. I'm so sorry, I'm embarrassed, I'm sorry. I'm so proud of you. You're such an amazing culture. You don't change for other people. You stay true to your values. You don't dress like everybody. You don't act like everybody. You people are absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of the Amish. Continue what you're doing. Carry on. And now it was Rabbi Twersky's chance to talk in Yiddish. And he said to her, Ashanda, you're an embarrassment. When you thought I was Jewish, you were so embarrassed of who I was, and you tell me that everything I'm doing is wrong. But when you find out that I'm Amish, or you thought that I wasn't Jewish, then you're proud of my culture. Then you tell me what I'm doing is right. You're an embarrassment to yourself. If the Jewish people don't respect themselves, then why should the world respect us? If you don't respect yourself and you're not willing to stand up and fight for yourself and live for yourself and be proud of who you are, so why should anybody else let you do that? Specifically the evil, bad people in the world. Evil people are bad people, and they're out to get us. You're not neurotic. They are out to get you. The evil people in the world are looking for the Jewish people. So what do we have to do? We need to stand up and be more proud. And we need to stand up and we need to celebrate Judaism more. If you see acts of anti-Semitism, if you don't put on tefillin or get a friend to put on tefillin. If you see acts of anti-Semitism, then make sure the next time to go to shul and take your kids to shul. And make sure you show them that they don't have to be scared to be Jewish. I'm not telling you it's easy. I'm not telling you that we don't all get scared. We do. But we have to stand up. We have to be proud. Act Jewish. Talk Jewish. Be Jewish. Bring another mitzvah into your life. Don't ever give in to evil. Don't ever give in to terror. Because the minute you do, it's a snowball effect. In fact, there's a fascinating story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That Crown Heights, when the Rebbe originally moved in, in the 50s, Crown Heights was had a lot of different kinds of Jews living in Crown Heights. It wasn't only Chabadniks, all kinds of Jews. It was a very Jewish neighborhood. And when the Rebbe would leave 770, he would walk home a certain way. And on the way home, I forgot the exact details of the stores, but there was a non-Jewish store owner. And every time he would walk past a non-Jewish store owner, the Rebbe would always say, hello. And then next door, there was a Jewish store owner who was not a Chabadnik, who was not a Lubavitcher. And whenever the Rebbe would walk past him, the Rebbe wouldn't say hello, the Rebbe would bow his head to acknowledge the person. And this guy got very upset. He's like, why does the Rebbe stop to say hello to the non-Jew all the time? But to me, he doesn't even say hello, he just nods his head. So one time he decided he's going to stop the Rebbe on the Rebbe's walk home. This was probably in the 60s or the 50s, whenever it was. And he stops the Rebbe and he says, I'm a little upset. He says, whenever you walk past a non-Jewish store owner, you stop and you say hello and you give him respect and you say, how are you? But to me, you just bow your head. Why don't you talk to me also? Why don't you ask me how I'm doing? Why do you only bow your head? So the Rebbe said, ever since I was a little kid, I think he said, my father taught me, or I decided that I'm never going to bow my head. I'm never going to bow my head to a non-Jew. Not that I'm not going to respect them. I'm going to say hello. I'm going to treat them as an equal. I'm going to give them all the respect in the world. But I won't bow my head. I'm not going to, what's the right word? Subservient or prostrate or belittle myself to a non-Jewish person. You have to understand the Rebbe's history. The Rebbe's father was constantly under threat from the communist regime. The Rebbe's father was the chief rabbi of what today is the Dnepropetrovsk, which was then Yekaterinoslav, a very big Jewish city in Ukraine today. And the Rebbe's father's house was always under surveillance, and was always he was always under threat of either being killed or being arrested. Ultimately, the Rebbe's father was arrested and sent off to exile in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, where he died, very, very sick and very ill. The Rebbe grew up with real oppression, real anti-Semitic oppression from the communist regime. And the Rebbe knew what it means that a Jew doesn't bow his head to a non-Jew. A Jew stands up proud. It's not that we don't respect them. It's that we don't in any way belittle ourselves in any way to other nations. We stand up and we're proud. And that's what the Jewish people need to do. And in fact, when it comes to Israel, when the Rebbe would speak about terrorism in Israel, the Rebbe would always say that what starts in Israel spreads to the whole world. And there's actually a fascinating little video where the Rebbe was speaking, I think it was in the 80s. I forgot when exactly. But the Rebbe was speaking to, I think, an Israeli general, and the Rebbe said that the real threat for the future of the world is going to come from Iran. We have to be careful. And back then, everybody was like, what are you talking about, Iran? There were so many bigger problems in the world. The Rebbe said that's where the source of problems are going to come. And the Rebbe also said that what happens in Israel spreads to the whole world. Terrorism is not an Israeli problem. Terrorism is a world problem. And what we saw in Israel is Israeli terrorism was first bombings and suicide bombings, and that unfortunately spread to the world with Madrid and London and 9/11, with the same thing, Boston, where there's suicide bombings going on around the world. And then in Israel, when Israel, thank God, put up a wall to protect itself and increase security everywhere, so that suicide bombing stopped, whenever it was 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, when stabbing attacks started again. First there were car rammings, right, and then there was stabbing attacks in Israel. Now we're seeing it come to America. The same terror that starts in Israel spreads around the world. In Israel, the same thing the Rebbe would say. Israel is ours because God gave it to us, and we don't give in to terrorism. The Rebbe was against, I don't even want to call it the peace process because that's a lie. The Rebbe was against the terror process, which is what it is, land for terror. From the beginning, from its inception, right away after 1967, the Rebbe has always said, you don't give back 1 inch of land, never ever. The Rebbe encouraged and pleaded and begged with all the leaders of Israel, both publicly in his talks and also when he met with them in private, not to give back land. The Rebbe actually spoke to Begin before he went to make the first peace agreement with Egypt, right? With Sadat, was it with Sadat, right? And the Rebbe said, they have more to lose than you have to lose. If they walk away from the negotiation tables with nothing, they lose everything. We don't lose anything. And towards the end of Begin's life, if I remember reading correctly, he regretted it very much so, the fact that they started the whole land for peace movement. And the Rebbe said, you don't give back land because it endangers. You don't give back is also wrong. You don't give away land. It's our land. You don't give it back. It's giving away. You don't give away land, the Rebbe said, because it endangers Jewish lives and it also endangers Arab lives. When there's terror, not only Jews die, Arabs die also. And therefore, and innocent Arabs die also. There are innocent Arabs. All 2 of them. Just kidding. There are innocent Arabs. There are innocent Arabs that want to live in peace. And the fact that they do want to live in peace with the education they've had is in itself a miracle. But there are people that want peace. But they themselves are the ones that are being used under their hospitals are where bombs are being stored. And from their houses is where people are launching attacks and shooting rockets and keeping all their guns and their missiles. Their lives are in danger. They're being killed by their own regimes also. The Rebbe said it protects Jewish lives and non-Jewish lives when there's a strong Israel. We have to have the Gaon Yaakov. We have to have the strength of Jacob. We have to have the power and the pride of Jacob. And therefore, when there's a president of America that is standing up to evil, we need to support that and we need to be thankful of that. Any people of morals and values that believe in the sanctity of life have to be happy and thankful to the President of America when he goes out and he kills an evil person such as Soleimani. And then when you watch the funeral and the hundreds of thousands of people that are there, I went on YouTube and I was watching the parts of the thing, and they put on the sad music as if all these people are walking, and you start thinking to yourself, oh, this is sad, somebody died. When Haman dies, hanging from the gallows, you don't walk past and go, oh, vey, shame, his poor grandchildren, they're going to have a Zaidi. You say, thank God somebody killed that guy before he killed more people. Amen. We need to be thankful and we need to be appreciative. And we need to do whatever you want. I'm not telling you what to do politically, but hopefully in your own mind you're able to find a place in your heart where you can understand this and promote these ideals or this value, unless these morals and values are not something that you resonate with. The next thing is, in our personal lives, we need to stand up and be more Jewish. What's the response to anti-Semitism? The response is more Judaism, and a stronger Judaism, and a stronger Jew. That's what it is. If you need to get armed, get armed. You need to go learn how to fight, learn how to fight. Whatever you need to do, you get stronger, but you don't get scared. Whatever you need to do, that's what you go out and do, in order that you continue and you do it even more, and you be even more proud, and to be even more Jewish. And that is ultimately what it's all about. Evil will always come after good. Good, the way that Hashem made the world, will have to stand up to evil until Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, evil will be taken out of the world. But until then, evil will always come after the good, and it's always going to come after the most good. It's always going to go after the canary. And the canary is always going to be the Jews. And that's why they're going after places of worship. That's why they're going after people that dressed as Jews, etc. It's because evil, negative, gets attracted to the positive. And the only way to get rid of evil and darkness is to bring more light. Sometimes that light is Torah and mitzvahs. Well, actually, that light is a mixture of Torah and mitzvahs, of doing another mitzvah. You can't just go out and get armed and go to Krav Maga, but then not celebrate Shabbat and not go to shul and not do anything, the voice of Jacob. Then you're also missing the whole point. You need to do both. We need to focus on the voice of Jacob, but we also have to get the hands of Esau. It's the same thing. And that's the blessing of Isaac to Jacob. That's the blessing to the Jewish people. And I want to just conclude with one final thing. And that is in the story of, first of all, L'chaim. In the story of Purim, there's a fascinating medrash that says like this, that when Haman comes to the palace of Achashverosh, and he says to Achashverosh has just read the book of where Mordechai saved his life, and he says to Haman, he says, what should I do to a man who the king, what should I give to a man who the king wants to honor? So Haman thinks, who does the king want to honor more than me? Obviously me. He says, you should get the guy dressed in the king's clothing, put him on the king's horse, and a very, very distinguished person should walk in front of the horse and say, this is what you should do to a man who the king wants to honor. And he thinks that he's going to ride on the horse, and Mordechai is going to walk in front of the horse. That's what Haman is thinking. So Achashverosh says, aha, great idea. Mordechai is going to go on the horse because he saved my life. And who's more distinguished than you? You're like the second in command over here. You're like the viceroy. You're like the Salamani. He says, you're going to walk in front of him and you're going to put him on the horse and you're going to shout in front of him. This is what you do to who the king wants to honor. The most embarrassing thing. So the Medrash tells us that that day, Mordechai had just fasted for 3 days. And Haman takes him because it was the night of the feast with Esther. He comes out to get on the horse, and Haman says, okay, Mordechai, get on the horse. Here you go. I'm going to walk in front of you. So Mordechai says to Haman, he says, listen, I've just been fasting for 3 days. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I can't climb on the horse. It's too high for me. So Haman says, so what should I do? So Mordechai says, bend over, like make yourself into like a stepping stool, and I'll stand on you, and I'll get onto the horse. So Haman says, okay, what's he going to do? He has to do it. The king commanded him to do it. He's got to do it. So Haman goes down and he makes himself into like a stepping stool for Mordechai. Mordechai sees us. Mordechai takes 3 steps backwards. Somebody says hike. They throw the ball. Just kidding. Mordechai comes running and he punts. He kicks Haman as hard as he can in the head or in the body. He kicks Haman. So Haman turns around, he says, you scoundrel. He says, what are you doing? You tricked me. You told me to go down because you're too tired. And now you kicked me in the head. You're waiting for me to get low. So he says to Mordechai, he says, you are going against the teachings of Judaism. In Judaism, there's a teaching that says, when your enemy falls down, do not rejoice. When your enemy falls down, don't rejoice. And here you are kicking me and rejoicing that I'm down. So the Medrash says, Mordechai said to me, he says, Haman, you're misunderstanding everything over here. He says, when the Medrash says, when you see your enemy fall down, it's talking about a person that's on the same level as you, same morals and values as you. Let's say a competitor in business, or I don't know, a next door neighbor that doesn't cut his trees or parks in your driveway all the time. And if you see something bad happen to them, you shouldn't rejoice. If someone is doing something not nice to you, you shouldn't rejoice. He said, but you're not even my enemy. You're not even on the same level. I don't consider you my friend, and I don't even consider you my enemy. You are worse than my enemy because you don't share any morals, any values as me. You're not in the same category as like a human being as me. So when it says I shouldn't rejoice when you fall, it's not talking about you. You I will attack, you I will kick, and you I will destroy. Mordechai was the ultimate of kindness. Mordechai was the head of the Sanhedrin. He was the chief rabbi. This is a guy that studied Torah all day long. This is not a guy that went boxing every day. He didn't grow up fighting Italians in the back, in the alleyways of Brooklyn. He's kicking Haman in the head. He's asking to get Haman hung on a gallows because this is an evil person. But what do the evil people do? And we don't have time for this to delve into this idea, but just to share one idea. Evil people take morals and values and use them for their own good. This is a very common thing in today. It's called, what do they call it when Israel attacks back? And equivalent, what do they call it? Proportionate response, right? We have to be moral, right? So you can't over-attack back. So Hezbollah or the PA, they're allowed to go and try and blow up kindergartens. But if we attack back and kill more people, then it's disproportionate response because it's not morally correct. They like to use morals and values when it suits them. In fact, it says about Haman, it says that when he comes to Achashverosh, he says, the Jewish people are not like anybody else. Their religion is different to everybody else. They're savage people. And the Medrash says, what was he talking about? He said, you know how savage these Jews are? They circumcise their kids when they're 8 days old. They take their kid, and they take a knife, and they cut their toenails. And they cut the kids, you know what? He says, they barbaric. Can you do that to an 8-year-old kid? Can you believe how bad these Jews are? So he plays the value card. He plays the moral card. He plays the card that he's worried about Jewish kids that are 8 days old that are being hurt, what he says, by their parents. But then the same Haman has no problem sending somebody out with a hatchet to cut that kid's head off. So do you care about the kid, Haman, or you don't care about the kid? Do you have morals and values, or you don't have morals and values? And the answer is they will abuse all morals and values to achieve their goals. That's why this whole thing of proportionate response. There's no such thing as a disproportionate response. Someone's coming to kill you, you kill them. If they're hiding behind people, people die. What are you supposed to do? Let terrorists live? Proportionate response? There's values and values? There's no values and values. Either you want to live a moral and value life, or you don't. And if you're living outside of morals and values, there's nothing we can do, but we have to fight you and kill you. That's the way that it works. So Haman comes and he says, they want to hurt their kids when they're 8 days old. I feel bad for the Jewish kids. But at the same time, I want to kill every man, woman, and child. That same kid that I'm worried about, that it's not right what the parents are doing to them, I've got no problem drowning that kid. You see how they take morals and values and twist it upside down? They use it. You see how that's being done in the world today also? Where the most evil people in the world are coming and saying, we're talking in the name of humanitarian rights. We're talking in the name of it's unfair what you're doing. Proportionate response, because it's not fair that you're killing children. Oh, really? It's not fair that we're killing children? First of all, you would kill your own children. They do kill their own children, terrorist regimes. They have no problem killing their own children. And they're more than happy to kill other children. So they come in with a moral argument, but they have no morals? Doesn't make any sense. What do we have to do? We learn from Mordechai. We learn from the Jews. We stand up and we kick them in the head. Kick them in the body. You kick them in the circumcision. You kick them wherever you got to kill them. You kick them. And that is based on Judaism. Remember we started off and we said, if you have values that are just based on emotions, so you're very angry. I'm very angry right now. I'm very upset with all terrorists or whatever. And then somebody can convince you, proportionate response, not proportionate response. They're also people. They've also got children. They've also got a wife. Soleimani's also got a wife. What about his children? What about his grandchildren? You start feeling, oy vey, I feel so bad, because you're a nice person. Because your response is all just emotional. But if you understand the values behind it, these are Torah values. The Torah tells us even your emotions are going to be wrong sometimes. You're going to feel bad for Soleimani. You're going to feel bad for Haman. You're going to feel bad for these people. You're going to say, maybe we shouldn't hurt them. What about their wives? What about their children? What about all these people? That's why it has to be based on values, on Torah values. Torah values tell us we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're safe. Once we're safe, we don't hurt anybody. But until we're safe, we go out and we kill them. And that is not because we're angry and we're upset. It's because that is how we're supposed to behave. That's how a moral and a good society behaves. A society with values behaves in such a way that we stand up to evil and we don't allow evil to flourish. We destroy it at its core. L'chaim, everybody. May we merit the times of peace and tranquility with the coming Mashiach now and not know of any more tzarot. Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim.